For everyone who's just now logging in, first off, welcome to our monthly masterclass this month. We're going to be talking to Johnny Thomas. He's going to be taking us through a new line of brushes that Dee is going to talk about in a moment, and going to be teaching us how to do a beautiful skyscape with a limited color palette using these new brushes. For anyone who's curious, I'm Katie Watson. I'm the community manager and comms director here at Silverbrush. Warren, our fearless leader, is currently packing up the house and getting things and the warehouse set up for the hurricane that is on its way here. So I'm filling in temporarily. Let's go ahead and I'm going to kick over to Dee for a second. We're going to have her talk through the brushes, and then Johnny, I'll let you introduce yourself after we hear from Dee.
Awesome.
So I'm going to just take 2 minutes of your time. So as I said to Johnny earlier, it took me between 3 and 4 years to come up with these brushes. They are the Bell Aqua brushes. They're a very unique filament. They are a synthetic red sable. So you've seen synthetic Kolinsky listed, but I've never really tested one better than this. And I do have all of my competitors' brushes. So I did test them to this. They're absorbent. They're really quite a wonderful quality, which Johnny will attest to. And I loved what Johnny just said also. He said that, the prices look really good to him on Amazon. So what more can I ask? They are going into retailer stores also. So you might be able to find them in your local retailer. But we have these in very unique shapes, a triangle. You can see the long wash over here. We have 13 different size rounds. We have them in dagger stripers. We have them in cat's tongues. So there's a lot of great shapes in this series. And because of that, I think you're going to all love it very much. This is, if you can see that, I also did 3 different shapes in the travel brushes. And our travel brushes are special because they have a little hole on the bottom of the cap so that let the air go out and not corrode the brush when it goes in and it's moist. And we have that for sale also. Unfortunately, always, travel brushes are more expensive. But I'm looking forward to seeing what you're doing, Johnny, and wish you great good luck.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Brushes.
So just so everyone knows, we will be dropping some links in the chat to Johnny's website so that you can get any info on him as we go throughout today. And then if you have any questions, just pop them in the Q&A, and then I'll politely interrupt Johnny as he's going on with his demonstration. So without further ado, Johnny, if you'll introduce yourself and kind of talk us through what we're going to be working on today.
Hello, my name is Johnny Thomas. I was born in Louisiana, as we said earlier. I've been doing watercolor for about 5 years now. I've been using silver brushes for a good long time. I mainly focus in skies, and I say mainly focus in skies. I'll paint anything, but skies are fun. And what I want to show you today with the skies is going to be how easy they are, for one, and also show off the Bell Aquas because they are pretty great. And I would say short of shocked at the pricing. So I appreciate that, Dee, because I'm sure I'll be buying some more.
Wonderful.
But yeah, that's what we're going to be focused on, is making skies easy.
Okay.
Johnny, did you have a second camera for your
I'm going to get my ugly mug off the camera and put the camera in a good spot for you.
Perfect. All right. Feel free to flip over whenever you are ready. And I am going to make sure everything is set up here while Johnny gets set up. Hello to everyone in the chat. Looks like we've got 30+ people who've been popping in and out. We're excited to see everyone in here. If you want to drop where you are from, love to hear from everybody. I've got Germany in the chat, Sweden. Oh my gosh, from everywhere. I think I saw a couple Floridians in here earlier. Norway, France. It's got to be late for you all. British Columbia, Germany, Oregon, Florida, just north of Tampa, thank goodness. Peru, Middle Earth. I mean, Middle Earth is a solid place. California, Virginia, Michigan. Everybody's from everywhere. All right, Johnny, if you want to go ahead and take away now that you've gotten everything set up, it's your show.
All right, for sure. So for skies, the biggest things to me are preserving your whites, the direction and flow, and minimal strokes as possible as to not overwork. I do believe that a lot of people are intimidated by skies for some reason, but I kind of want to make this a little bit easier as a sense of when you look out and see a pretty sky, you can paint it. So what we're going to do is kind of sketch out the clouds first, and through the process, I'm going to show you a couple things that to stay away from. There's some goods and bads to painting skies with watercolors, as watercolor is kind of its own beast, right? So first we'll sketch out some of the clouds real quick. Once you get used to painting clouds, it gets a lot easier. So all I want to focus on is going to be where my clouds are going. And I normally put an arrow out to show that. And we'll deal with some of the perspective here too. The big thing, I'm going to show off one of these brushes real quick. Soft brush when you're doing wet and wet for skies. And the silver black velvet is probably my favorite for it. I haven't got to use the Bell Aqua flat wash yet, but it does feel pretty soft. It's got a good spring to it. So I do appreciate that from D. And once we get the cloud shape, which we've got a big cloud here, we're going to wet the entire page and do some undertones to make the sky kind of pop out. Let's see. And the reason why I like a soft brush like the Black Velvets is you end up not lifting as much paint on other washes too. So some of the other harder brushes will actually lift the paint from the paper. Not a good thing with skies. So we've got the full paper wet down and limited palette, using basically primaries for the most part and colors that really anyone can use. So normally I like to do ultramarine mix. That's gonna be the most color we're gonna have on the paper. And it's good to have your paint mix before you go in. That way your paper doesn't dry up on you. And yellow ochre for the bottom. And maybe we'll add some pink undertones. So the entire paper is wet right now. And we'll start laying in some of the shadows on the clouds first. I like to do the undertones first because you can kind of shape your clouds around them. Some of that pink, bright pink down there. And where it tends to get a little bit warmer towards the sun, a little bit of yellow ochre. The big thing I think is seeing the shapes for one and making sure everything stays real soft. So if I see any harsh colors, normally kind of dab them out. And these brushes, the Bell Aquas, they're soft enough and springy enough to where you can get some soft edges and lift a good bit. Got some good pinks there. And Katie, I'll probably be using the heat gun between here and there. So that'd be a good time if y'all want to plug any other things y'all got going on with silver as well.
Yeah, of course. Just let me know and mute yourself and I'll.
For sure. Yeah, that heat gun can be loud.
So, Johnny, are you pulling from an actual image or is this just from your mind?
I've painted about 2.5 million skies, I'd imagine, at this point. So now it's kind of coming from the head more than reference. But when you're painting from the mind, you're seeing a sky every day, right? So if you've got a reference, all you're doing is looking for the big shapes, looking for the undertones, kind of the same thing we're doing here. It's just, I don't know, I've got 1,000 skies in my head for some reason. Big appreciator of skies. I'll probably carry this all the way down. And at the end of this, I'll show you a cool trick with this entire sky too. So pink and yellow go together pretty good. They'll actually mix into almost an orange, which is fine when it's wet and wet. But you've got some other issues where we start getting into yellow and blue. That'll create a green on you. And we're using the pink right here as almost a buffer between those two. All right, so the paper's still wet. Up here, I might add a little bit of water. And now I can go with the blue. So this is 3 colors. We're about to create about 4 or 5 different colors with these. And I'm gonna take that ultramarine. And now that we got that sketch here, we can kind of see where that cloud structure is coming in. The big thing for me with skies is saving your whites, right? A lot of people use gouache, but you don't necessarily have to. So we know that our cloud edge is here. We know our shadows are here. And when I go in with the blue, I basically kind of just start shaping in whatever structure I want. Create some light glares there. I think a big thing with skies is a lot of people, if they're painting from reference, tend to lean a little bit too much on the reference. Whereas it's a watercolor, you kind of have no control, right? And the no control thing can be really cool. Another cool trick with the wet and wet too, while this is still kind of drying on its own. If you go to your paper towel, dry off your brush a little bit, make sure it's clean, get the water out. You can almost create these wisps with it by lifting. And the Bell Aquas do a really good job of lifting. So we got some of these glares here. And at any point I want to soften an edge. Bring it straight back into this. And I'll kind of show you. If you don't have that buffer there, it can get really hairy when it comes to mixing colors. So I'll show you real quick. We'll go with that blue. We got our blue sky there. And without that pink buffer, let's go with the yellow ochre. You start to get a green, and green's not naturally occurring in the sky. So that's one thing you want to avoid. Also, when lifting right here, you got to make sure that your brush is pretty damp, but also not full of water. If you put too much water in the mix, it'll create these weird blooms on you. And sometimes random blooms can be cool, but most times they're not. So right there, we got the wisp. And normally what I try to do towards the bottom here, we're getting close to that yellow. I'll keep that buffer zone, but I'm gonna water this blue down a good bit. So we can create some more cloud shapes in there. I'm liking the way this is looking so far. Like Dee said, they've got a good spring to them. That's what I'm really enjoying about the Bell Aquas. They hold a ton of paint, ton of water.
How do you feel like the release is when you're using the actual brush itself? I mean, I'm sure everyone here has used one of those watercolor brushes that holds a lot and releases a lot instantly. How are you feeling the Bell Aqua does when it comes to the control that you have in putting down the color?
It's very controlled. I don't use synthetic brushes very often. This might be the only synthetic brush that I've liked probably in the last 2-3 years for sure. Just because, like she said, it mimics that sable so well. It's oddly soft, but oddly firm at the same time. So soft for the, little blushing up there, and stiff enough to lift as well. I'm going to dry this real quick, Katie, if you want to talk a little bit more about the Bell Aquas, or Ms. D wants to chime in.
Yeah, of course. So Dee, this is probably a question for you, or maybe it's a question for Warren that neither of us know the answer to. Any idea on the European release of the Bell Aqua brushes? That's one of the questions we had in the chat. I'm fairly certain that's a Warren-based question, but who asked that? If you want to send us an email, I can look into that a little bit further. Or just fill out the form on our website. As far as the Bella Aqua are concerned, just for anyone who has popped in a little bit late, they are a fully synthetic watercolor brush. It's designed to imitate red sable, so it's meant to have a lot of holding capacity, but at the same time, give you a lot of control as you move through. And then it's meant to have a really nice spring to it so that it doesn't necessarily lay flat the second that you use the brush. Dee's been working on them for about 3 or 4 years at this point, and we really were looking to create something that wasn't on the market at all from any of our competitors, and we knew there was a real gap in finding a fully synthetic watercolor brush that just worked beautifully. Dee, do you happen to know when we are going to hit the European market with the Bell Aqua brushes?
They should be up within the month or 2 months. They
Okay.
should definitely be there. Let's see, what is this? October. I think they're ready to rock and roll. So I'm just waiting for some videos to come in, but I think they're putting it up now.
Oh, that's awesome. So we're very close, apparently, to getting those up. If anyone has any questions for myself, Dee, or Johnny, you can feel like popping them in the chat. Dee, another question that I had is, what is the smallest brush in the set? Asking for a tiny art friend.
Yes, so I did a set that's, let's see that one over there, and it comes with rounds in a 50, 30, 20, and a 0. So they're teeny. They're very small.
So teeny is the answer to that.
Teeny, teeny tiny. Yeah.
Teeny tiny. Let's see. Christmas present for me in Ireland. Absolutely.
I don't know. It didn't want to come back from mute for some reason. I wanted to ask Dee, could she explain more about the Golden Natural? That is another brush that I've been loving a ton lately.
D, you're on mute now. Stay the mute.
Yeah, it's not helping us.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Golden Natural actually has a very long life. I put it in just when I put in Black Velvet, which was about 1990. And it is a very interesting combination of golden Taklon and some natural hair. The natural hair gives it that nice absorbency, and you know you're using it, Johnny, so you know that it's very absorbent. And
Very.
The synthetic gives it wonderful bounce. So you have a really nice combination there. It's a wonderful illustration brush. It lays down a lot of color, and I think it's really a wonderful brush. Also, it's in the same family as Black Velvet. Black Velvet has a bit more animal hair in it, so that it's always going to be able to absorb that much more than Golden Natural. But Golden Natural serves a great purpose, great for illustrators. I used to sell a great deal in the fashion illustration trade years ago, and those folks love that particular type of brush. You want something that's tight and controlling, going inside the lines, not outside the lines. That's what Golden Natural is very good for.
Yeah, it's pretty durable too, Dee. It's really durable. I've beat the hell out of that brush for a good while now.
Good.
It can do something to the hairs, and it's held up very nice. So that's another one of my favorites. Before I go back into the mixing part of this, I did want to kind of show what I was talking about, going back and forth to the napkin. Excuse me. To dry off your brush between while we were lifting those wisps. The bad part about not going back to the napkin, not drying the brush off, is if you go back in, you're going to create some weird artifacts in here with more water on the brush. So that's kind of a big one. And I think I see a lot of people do that. What tends to happen is that it kind of blooms out. I don't know if you can see that very well on the camera, but that's a bad thing to do. So make sure you're dampening and drying between to lift out those wisps. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and mix kind of a cool purple. We use the same pink we used with the ultramarine. And I'll show you one more thing about why I really like the Black Velvet brush for this. Going back into the wash, this is all dry now. To me, the Black Velvet is just soft enough to be able to re-wet the entire page without reactivating those colors. We get the entire page wet again. And you could use a spritz for this, but I feel like this makes a little bit more of a consistent wash. And all I'm gonna do now is start kind of building these tones around. So a little more ultramarine, some purple, some pinks. We've created kind of a bright purple there. And all I'm gonna do is start building up some more of these shadows here. All we're doing is paying attention to where that flow is going. So I can start throwing in some more shadows down here. And this is kind of part of that, what you were talking about, Katie, with the release of the pigment. It's very controlled for how much it holds. Maybe a few more over here. And Dee, you said you've been working on this brush for 4 years now?
It started during the pandemic because I realized I actually started a bunch of things during the pandemic, which just now are coming to fruition. Bell Aqua was one of those that I started, very long time ago. It feels like a very long time ago. It's probably good 3-4 years ago, and you can see it's really very, very well made. But it takes time, it takes patience, and it takes concentration on it. Really does.
What made you choose the blue for the handle, Dee? I really like
it. Reminded me of water.
I love it. I love it.
It reminded me of water. That's why I also have the name Aqua in it, which is another name for water. I wanted people to know that it was something that is specifically for gouache and watercolor. You can
Right.
absolutely use the gouache,
Okay. I'm
gouache
going to
brush.
go back in with some more ultramarine, and this is going to lean a little bit more ultramarine compared to the other purple we had. But all we're doing right here is kind of building more subtle shadows in these clouds. And as long as you find your light, we know our direction's going this way, our light's coming in this way. Finding these shadows should be pretty simple. Another tip with skies too is that everything starts to get a little bit smaller, a little bit skinnier towards the horizon line. So I'm gonna get some more of that yellow ochre and maybe a little bit of that pink in here. And we'll start throwing in some of those skinnier line clouds here. All you're really doing is filling the flow. I think this at this point is where it's real easy to get overworked on skies. Just gotta kind of let the paint do its thing, especially wet and wet like this. Let me take a little bit more of that blue, create some more shadows here. I just don't want people to be intimidated by the skies. We did an entire year with our community, which I got to give a shout out to. Best community on Instagram for sure. But we did an entire 53-week challenge of skies. And I want to say everybody grew from it. I didn't see anybody really fall off. Everybody feels a little bit more confident of mind. Just keeping all the flow coming this way.
So, Johnny, we have a question in the chat for you. It says, does he have any experience with the technique where it looks like you have wiped steam away on a window, revealing the image behind?
Hmm. I don't think I do. Steam on a window?
I think it's more like a foggy window, and then like you have just like one small part of it where you can look through and see what's outside. Um,
No, I don't think I painted that, but that sounds very interesting, actually.
yeah, I'm thinking of, you're sitting in your house and you look out the window and you see the sunset kind of thing. Huh.
That would actually be pretty cool. I might have to work on that one.
Yeah, I was about to say, it sounds like a fun project for everyone.
Another thing with these guys too, you'll notice after we re-wet the entire page, everything starts to dry a little bit on its own kind of accord. So up here, I'm seeing things still wet. Down here, seeing things still wet. If you notice that this starts to dry on you, a good spritz bottle, that's a good tool to have around. It will kind of soften things for you as well. Like I've got some hard edges here. One quick spritz. And again, with the Bell Aquas, I hate to keep bragging on them, but they're great. They lift so well. So I'll go back and forth to the paper towel and dry off, and then you can kind of rework things. I think a lot of people think with watercolor that there's no repairing things. Like once it's down. But to me, as long as you've got a good brush, good paper, it's not too hard to fix things. And we can kind of start shaping this back around too. A few more little in shadows here.
So,
Another,
Johnny, Leon, I know you talked about the importance of white and keeping white space.
right.
Is that a long-term like choice, or is that like, oh no, this is like a foundation in painting? Where does that technique come from, and how did you discover it?
So, backstory on this. I feel like why watercolor was chosen as my medium was because of the challenge of it. Uh, and I believe a lot of us kind of lean on, I'm not too big of a gouache artist. I've used gouache before. A lot of people will lean on white gouache. And to me, it never looks as natural as saving that white in your paper. Uh, we deal with transparency in watercolors, right? So that's a long-term goal for me is to maybe show people it's not so hard to do. And it does make quite a difference in the overall look of the painting.
I love that. It also, I guess, forces you to have a little forethought, right? You've got to
Right.
hold on to what you're going to end with rather than just starting from a place of chaos, which is where I generally start when it comes to painting. Um, a couple more questions in the chat. Someone has asked, what paper are you working on at present?
This is a Saunders Waterford hot press paper. I've been having a lot of fun with hot press. If you're using cold press, which I know most watercolor artists do, they tend to absorb more or hold more water into the paper. Hot press, again, is more about the challenge of it for me, but it creates pretty vibrant colors, really stark and just good lines on them. So yeah, it's hot press, Saunders Waterford, 140 pound.
Okay, and then we have another question regarding lifting.
Mhm.
Um, it says, tip, you can also lift after it's dry with a fantastic bristle brush. Have you played around with lifting the paint after it's dried?
I will on florals, not so much on skies, because I do find that there's a risk for maybe those awkward blooms that come into hand. Florals, I feel like you can get away with. Skies are a little different, at least for me.
Okay,
I'm gonna dry real quick, Katie. It shouldn't take me but just a second.
of course. Um, Anyone else have any questions about the Belle Aqua or any of the other brushes that we have in the lineup? Dee is here, so now is the time to ask if you've got questions. Um, I think only a couple of people have joined us late, but I guess if you missed the very beginning, I'm Katie. I'm the community and comms director here at Silverbrush. There's a hurricane headed towards Florida, so Warren has had to get the warehouse ready and make sure everything's packed up and safe and secure. So today I'm hosting with the fabulous Dee. Dee is the founder of Silverbrush, in case anyone didn't know who she was. I don't know how you wouldn't, but question in the chat. Where are we able to buy the Belle Aquas in the US? So currently they are only available on Amazon. However, there are several major retailers working to get them into their stores as quickly as possible and onto their websites. I don't have exact dates on that. I'm not sure if Dee has those dates either.
Well, keep looking at Dick Blick because we expect Dick Blick to put it up any day. They are putting them in, and don't know if Jerry's Autorama is going to be putting them in. It'd be good if they did. You might want to ask the folks there. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know Dick Blick is putting them in, and they're a very large online retailer. And I'm not sure about Cheap Joe's. I don't know the answer to that either. So you can get them right now at Amazon. Dick Blick is definitely putting them in. I know he shipped out a bunch of racks around the country, so I know we're getting them into stores near you. But you can also, if you want to give Jerry's and Cheap Joe's a call and ask if they'll be putting in the Belle Aqua from Silverbrush, you could do that as well. But if you want to make your life simple, they're on Amazon. Enjoy.
Yeah.
In terms, I noticed that there's an Australia, somebody was from Australia and somebody also, a few people from Europe. They should be in Europe very shortly also,
Yeah.
within the next month, I expect.
Dee, another question for you while Johnny's finishing up. Where would you position the Belle Aqua to the Black Velvet as far as performance is concerned?
Well, black velvet is a combination of squirrel hair and synthetic fiber. So because of the natural hair, you have this enormous amount of absorbency. You're never going to get that much with Belle Aqua. It's just not physically possible. So it's 100% synthetic, but I've done everything I can do to make it an absorbent synthetic, which is not an easy task, I can assure you. So I would put, in terms of absorbency, you put black velvet first, and then you could put Belle Aqua right next to it. And of course, as Johnny was saying, the Golden Natural also is right there in terms of absorbency. Lots of choices at Silverbrush. There are lots of choices for you to choose from, prices all over. And but the one thing that is very, very important for you to know is that it is the finest quality that you'll ever find in an artist brush. So it's not going to wear out, it's not going to deteriorate, and you'll be able to use it for years upon years upon years. As a matter of fact, I have given out brushes for samples to educators over the years, and I still have people who are using their samples from 1995, and when I came out with the bristle on 2001. So, you're talking about years and years. So even if it's a little bit more, maybe $1.50 more than the competitive item, you're going to have it that much longer. So it's a really great tool.
I do want to say, Dee, I do appreciate all that info on the black velvet line too, because I do feel like there's a difference between, as far as use wise, the black velvets I tend to use more on the softer side of things. Uh,
Right.
Again, with the Bell Aquas, I feel like these are just soft enough to still get soft, but also that firm lifting.
Hmm.
But yeah, the Bell Aquas are a new favorite for me.
Good. Wonderful.
So now we're not doing wet and wet anymore. This is going to be wet on dry. And all I'm going to do is kind of reaffirm some of these solid lines towards the bottom of it. I tend not to want to go back into a sky more than 3 times just because you end up kind of overworking things. So maybe a little bit of that pink. And this is going to be kind of a watery mix. And all I'm doing here is just, again, creating a little bit of texture. Not much. It doesn't take much with this. So darkening up some shadows, getting that flow back. I think a lot of the times with skies, people tend to overthink them as well. So as long as you kind of go on with the flow of the direction, perspective of things, you can make really pretty skies. And some people we would stop at this point. And if you're painting a landscape, that sky will be just enough for your landscape as well. Keep the direction going, and then back in with that warm color. Everything gets a little bit skinnier towards the bottom here. And it kind of flattens out. And like I said, we did a whole year of skies, and they're all up on Instagram if anybody wants to check it out. It was hashtag skies with JT. We painted some pretty magnificent skies. Okay, and as far as this point, to me, the sky's done. And you can add in at this point, this is the kind of the magic of skies. I tend to keep a big perspective that we have more room to work. And then anything below here is not taking away too much focus from the sky itself. And we'll use that same blue. And maybe a little bit of that yellow ochre. You can kind of create this small itty bitty landscape here. You can do mountains, you can do seascapes. The sky kind of sets up everything for you. A bit more blue here. Katie, I do tend to paint kind of quick. So if you want, I can also do another quick loose sky. You can give a little bit more play, maybe with the golden natural brush. Show how
Yeah,
that one.
of
Yeah,
course, whatever works for you. Dee, I think you're still right there. So I had a question in the chat. It says, I'm a huge fan of the black velvet line and am now in the market for a big quill brush, not
Mm.
extremely expensive. Can you recommend the best option to look into from Silver?
Did she just say not expensive?
I know, and she said quill in the same sentence.
Yeah.
Well, we do happen to have a fabulous 100% Taklon quill. It is in our Atelier line. Do you remember the number of that? I think
I'll go grab the link.
yeah, go grab the link. It's 100% Taklon. It is the least expensive quill, fabulous quill on the market. It's got a nice fat belly and nice sharp point. We have lots of quills. We have them in goat hair. We have them in a mix of squirrel and synthetic. And we also have, and this is for Johnny, we also have quills in the Golden Natural series, which is
Oh,
a
no.
mixture of synthetic and natural hair. So we have lots of quills, but there is one 100% Taklon that is, when I take it to a consumer show, we sell out of them completely. They were wonderful, wonderful series and very strong, very durable, and priced very, very reasonably. They really are. And maybe you can look that up for me, Katie. I can look it up too.
Yeah, I just pulled up, there's a link to the webpage with the quills in the chat
Good,
for anyone who wants to go learn some more about
good.
them. And then there's a variety of online retailers who will sell those specific brushes.
Sure. I believe they're on Amazon as well.
Yes, they are on Amazon as well.
Katie, I did want to go back to the black velvets a little bit more. I know we're kind of bragging on those a good bit. If you notice with the 1-inch flat wash when we rewet the whole paper, that's kind of what I was talking about with that softer brush. You'll keep those whites. Some stiffer brushes, harder brushes will actually start pulling this old pigment up. and you'll lose all your whites. So another point in preserving whites for sure.
I
I'm
have
gonna,
a question for you, Johnny. Do
yes,
you
ma'am.
do you ever use mastic the mastic gel on your watercolors to keep a piece of the paper clear?
Masking fluid. I've been getting
Masking
away from it
fluid, thank you,
recently.
masking fluid. Yeah. Do you ever use
I have
that?
used it. Yeah, I've used it before. I really do like it for certain things, and I think that's a good kind of starter point for learning to keep your whites. Like you said, we pre-planned before, right? Watercolor is chaos, but it's controlled chaos.
Right.
Masking fluid, say if you're doing, it's a little tougher with skies because I feel like you get some hard edges, but sometimes hard edges can be good.
Hmm.
But yeah, florals, any kind of little white highlights that you want to keep in a landscape or anything like that, masking fluid works really well for.
Okay. Just curious. Thank you.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I'm going to tape this one up real quick and I'll kind of show you just a quick loose sky. This one should be more along the lines of I tend to play with skies a lot. If you just walk outside, see what the sky you have, and try to paint that in a simplistic form, I feel like you can gain a ton of confidence from that. So we'll do that. And I've got a pretty clear sky, but we'll add some white clouds to this. It's kind of nice looking outside the window and seeing something pretty. I know Florida's not seeing too much right now, but has the rain
Well,
started today yet, Katie?
so no, I'm in the greater Orlando area. We haven't gotten any rain yet, but I will say our skies are gorgeous today. Because we're getting that beautiful weather that you get right before the hurricane
Oh, yeah.
comes. Probably mid-afternoon, it's going to get wild. But right now it's, there's a lot of clouds, there's stuff moving in and out, so we got a lot of reflection. It's quite lovely. Like looking
I'm
out the window
definitely
now.
following my thoughts. That hurricane looks like it's strengthened a little bit too much for my liking.
Yeah, same here, same here. When you are like giving education and tips to anyone who is just starting out in the watercolor space and they're like, I'm going to start at skies because in my mind that seems like a pretty fun place to start.
Right.
What's the number one direction that you like ease them? Is it into just, be a part of the chaos? Is it find what works for you? Kind of how do you guide a new artist entering into skies specifically?
I think it's the confidence level and kind of like with everything else, the more you do it, the better you'll feel about it. A lot of the times, again, a lot of people overthink a sky or even to the point of maybe underthinking a sky. I know there's a few techniques with the paper towel that a lot of people on YouTube use. I think the preserving the whites is what changed my sky perspective, like my confidence in skies. So that'd probably be my biggest thing is maybe leave more white space than you think, especially on these kind of bigger blue skies. I'm going to show that right here, actually. Yeah, just it's confidence level. And all you got to do is keep doing it. I think it's easy to give up on watercolor because it is that kind of controlled chaos. But find a good community, plug in mine, the best community ever, and let those guys kind of build you up. There's a ton of people out there that paint really beautiful skies and they don't think I don't know. They think that they're too hard. It's not a hard thing to do if you let it be simple. I'm going to use the Golden Natural just to kind of show this brush off to you. I've had a ton of fun with this one. And what I'm going to do is just kind of a loose big sky. Again, if you just mark out, you don't need to sketch it. Let's say our direction. We'll go the opposite way this time. This will be pretty quick. So light coming in this way, flow going out this way. Entire paper's wet. That's a good starting point, actually. If you do a bunch of wet and wet skies, everything's real soft. You don't end up with those hard lines. And I think that can build a lot of confidence in skies. So we'll do ultramarine and maybe a little bit of Prussian. I think with watercolor, a lot of people just don't like seeing the movement. You feel like you're losing control. Let's see, direction this way, light this way. We can start kind of bringing that blue in. And with wet and wet, it does move. I think play like this does a lot for confidence. Blue. I'm curious, did what medium do you choose when you go to paint?
well, because when I try and demo, not to say I'm an artist like you are, I'm just a hacker. What I use as the gouache because I find I want the opacity versus the transparency. And I need, I always need it to show up in camera. I'm taking pictures of it. I've got to get it to, so people can see it online. And I
Right.
really can't work with transparent watercolors. So I go the extra mile and do the gouache. And they work really well for me. Of course, the brushes you're using work beautifully for gouache as well.
See, I always tell everybody if I would have started out in gouache, I think I would have stuck with the gouache and never tried watercolor. Because you're
Right,
right. I do agree the vibrancy, the opacity, really cool.
right. And they have some great colors now for the I think it's Golden has something called a flat matte um, acrylic, also for the Instagram crowd, and for those that are putting it online. So I need something with a real color with pigmentation. The,
Right.
the the thing I love that I used to use was ink, and black velvet works fabulously for ink because it's so loose. Uh,
Right.
but I still have you're probably much more controlling than I am. I still have problems controlling ink off of black velvet, although black velvet, because of the squirrel hair, is so absorbent. It does a really good job with ink as well. And some of the ink pigmentation is magnificent. It really is.
Yeah, they've got some wonderful artists using the inks lately.
Yes, yes, you're right. You're right.
I feel like that's almost becoming a new thing. Well, I say a new thing. It's becoming more revitalized.
I think so. I think so. I think a lot. I think ink painting is you have that vibrancy of color that you really can't get in some other form,
Right. Right.
but it's difficult to control. That's where black velvet comes in.
So I do want to say with these with the play, the getting your confidence up in skies, a lot of times you can knock about 20 of these out in a day, right? So if you just rewet your paper, uh just come in with some blue and start playing with it, you'll actually start learning more control, water control, which is very important with skies. I see this part's kind of drying now. We've got some good wisp here, good wisp there, and I do kind of want to show off this golden natural for the lifting as well. It's another brush that's good for the lifting. Kind of bring some more wisp out this way. Again, just making sure that your brush is pretty much dry at this point.
Well, that's great.
And it's really simple stuff. And this will give you the confidence to tackle a little bit tougher skies later on too. So as this dries a little bit, we know we got shadows, our light's coming in this direction here. Just make sure we got some wetness on the paper. And this is going to be a 2-color set here too. So we'll do the ultramarine. Well, we could say 3 with the Prussian. And then I'll normally add in a little bit of brown, like a burnt umber. And that'll give you a good gray. And something just as simple as tagging some of this in, you'll create just those inner cloud shapes. As long as you keep in the direction, it will not look bad. I guess my biggest advice would be do about 1,000 skies a day, and you should be fine.
We have a question in the chat, and it is how to control using watercolor as it gives you a spontaneous shape.
I think that's the overall joy in watercolor. I think that's one thing that's probably where the failure comes in is they try to control watercolor too much, and you end up with blooms and whatnot. I think feeling the drying of it, the movement. Like I said, with these brushes, you're able to kind of lift a little bit. So while it's uncontrolled, you can still kind of shape things. And that comes with technique, that comes with practice, that comes with a good brush, good paper. It's a really good medium for people that maybe want too much control. It teaches you a lot.
Johnny, while we have you captive, what's your villain origin story? Where did your love for art come from? How did you kind of discover it? What's the story there?
I have no art school besides if you count like kindergarten coloring and whatnot. So the villain story is that I was too cheap when we bought our new house to buy big box art store stuff. So decorating the walls and whatnot. And I told myself that I could do it for way cheaper. And what I found out was after all the art supplies and buying brushes from Miss D, it may not have been that much cheaper, but switched over from acrylic to watercolors when I was traveling a lot. And that's kind of been the ticket there. It's a short story. I've been doing it for 5 years, really enjoying more of the community, the art. It's just, I don't know, it's a community like no other, put it that way.
That's incredible. Sometimes art comes to you regardless of where you're meant to be in life and just hits you over the head and is like,
It's true.
You're part of us now." So that's incredible. And I mean, you've got a whole bunch of community members in the chat who are also,
They're
uh,
all beautiful. I can
singing.
tell you that much.
They're all singing your praises, and every time you say paint a million skies, they're like, "Yep, paint a lot of skies, paint a lot of skies." So
It works though. Like I said, practice makes permanent. It's just
that's
different.
true. We've also been putting the link to Johnny's community in the chat. So if anybody's interested in learning more about Johnny, you can visit his website and go from there.
Katie, I'm gonna let you do a little bit more talking. I'm gonna dry this. I'm gonna kind of show just that hard texture line to this, and that
Of
should be enough.
course.
1 second.
Yeah. So as we finish up today, if anybody has any last minute questions, go ahead and you can pop them in the chat. Not seeing any links. No, there's only one chat. I will see what I can do about that. There'll also be a replay at the end. We'll take the recording and put it in an email and get it sent to everyone who RSVP today. And there will be links to Johnny's community in that email as well. And I believe there's also a link in the RSVP if you want to head back over to that website. No, yep, no links. So strange. I'll see what I can do about that. If anyone has any last minute questions, go ahead and feel free to pop them in the chat. We're probably going to wrap up in the next 10-ish minutes. Dee, do you have any words while Johnny's finishing this up?
No, I'm enjoying watching him do the creative process because this is really soup to nuts. You can see how he's keeping it flowing and getting that dry. I know it's sometimes in certain areas it's very hard to get paintings to dry, and in my area it tends to be a little. And so if it in your area it's wetter, my area is drier. So they have to do, they're doing a lot of spritzing and they're doing a lot of moistening on the paper. So, it's interesting the different communities where you have different problems. But it's good to see him doing from the very beginning to a complete painting.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes we get only halfway through a project on these lives,
Right.
so it's
Right.
fun to see the full process. Johnny, we still can't hear you again. We're going to have to do whatever that magic trick you figured out is.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
It's something to do with that button. But yeah, I just like again, I wanted to show that it's not hard to do these skies. Everybody can paint skies, and they're quick. I mean, I paint quick. I know I do, but there's nothing to them. Have confidence. One big tip I'll leave y'all with is to put color in there and then leave it alone. Overworking is the devil of water skies. But yeah.
Wonderful. Okay.
And I do want to say, if y'all don't mind, I did release a self-published book. I'm going to do a little self-plug real quick. Just a Thought. It's a book for artists, just normal everyday quotes, some art in there. And I did want to say that I will be putting a link on the website to where you'll get one of these originals today. It's going to be a limited time for that. And I just want to say I appreciate you, Miss D, Miss Katie. That was a lot of fun. And I hope everybody got something from that.
And thank you very much for your time and what you've been able to accomplish. We really appreciate it very much. And I hope we can meet again. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And good luck to you, Miss Katie, over there in Florida.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm worried about the warehouse. I have a feeling a little later this week I'm gonna be over in Clearwater helping clean things up. So I know, shoveling out the sand and the water. Thank you everyone so much for joining again. There will be a replay in the email that we send. You'll have some links to the brushes that Johnny's talked about today and some links to Johnny and his community. Remember Johnny's little plug, so he'll have something over on the website for his book and access to the 2 originals that he did today. And if you have any questions, feel free to email us or fill out the form on our website, and we will be happy to assist you guys. So thank you so very much. Everybody in Florida, please stay safe.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, guys.